we're going to go ahead and kick it over to the folks here to introduce themselves and get the presentation started, and I will hide my face as best as possible. Enjoy, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kamala. Let me share my screen. Thank you everyone for joining us today. We are super excited for the next 56 minutes that you all have with us. My name is Prakash. Hope you all can hear me. I'm one of the founder at Subscribe, was at Okta before starting Subscribe, build the code to revenue system at Okta, went through a lot of different pain points that many of you might have been going or have gone through in the past and thought maybe somebody needs to solve it. So that's what we are trying to do at Subscribe. With me, I'm super excited to have Laura with us. Laura is the VP of RevOps at Olo, has amazing experience. Some of the experience that she has in past before Olo is great. And I'm really, really excited to hear her perspective on today's topic. And I would pass it to Laura for the introduction. But before that, I would say that, okay, the one thing I would like you all to gain out of this next 50 minutes is if you are running a project today where you are trying to bring a tool and maybe in this economy it's not going well, and probably you can take a couple of steps from here, try to implement and see that if it can help you to move faster. Or if you are planning to run a project in the coming quarter, then maybe there are steps here, there are information here, which you can take it to the practice. And that will help you to not just be successful in the project, but as well as maybe move it faster so that you can achieve the result. So I'll pass it to Laura. Thank you, Laura, for joining us. A quick introduction that the team wants to hear or everybody wants to hear.
Yeah, thank you, Prakash. So excited to be here. Thanks for having me. I am the VP of RevOps at Olo, which is a company that helps restaurants fulfill on their digital ordering and give brands more information about their customers. I've been at Olo like about 9 months, but prior to this have built up many programs and organizations, not just in the RevOps function, but also in the field. By the way, that would be my first advice to anybody in the RevOps function to get really good at your job, to try to spend some time in the field. And I think, Prakash, you wanted one fun fact about me, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so I think the most interesting thing about my background is prior to my 17 years of being in tech, I was formerly a chef. And so landing this job at Olo, I think, was just like the best combination of my commercial skill set and my passion.
Oh, wow. Wow. I didn't know that. Yeah, that's like say coming back to home and with a different type of experience and then helping what you were doing probably 17 years back, the product is now helping them to do the job. So that's great. Thanks again, Laura, for joining us. Going back to so as I'll just move to the first slide. The whole thing today we want to focus is on if you are a champion, you're part of the RevOps, you always probably owning some tool or you're trying to bring some tool, then how can you, the role that we call in the industry is the champion, how can we help you to, or what are the different traits or different role that as a champion you have to do it? And then one of the things is like, if you're trying to make a change, be it the system, be it the process, there is always few things that, okay, people have some question, maybe you have some resistance around that. How can you be as a champion, something like a never give up? Try to make sure that, okay, all your stakeholders and everybody is agreeing to your value prop or whatever the target or the project you have. So that's the topic. We'll jump to this. If you think about like, what are the good champion? What are the different traits? What makes it a good champion? And there are a few things. I'll go through the bullet point, but would love to hear from Laura about some more details about that. The power and influence. You have to have you have to have the perception, or you have to have the relation within the company so that you can go and influence the team. You have to have the access to the economic buyer, the personal conviction. At the end of the day, by heart, you should be sold that you want to make this change. If you're not convinced, then it's very hard to to convince the other people. But I'll pass it to you, Laura, and if you can put some color around some of these major points.
Yeah, thank you, Prakash. So I think the topic of a champion, like I love this topic. It's passionate for me. And every time, as part of my role in RevOps, I also own productivity, which is also enablement for the revenue team. And one of the main things that we really over rotate on is like, do we have a champion? So on the sales side, when we bring our deals to market, we always focus on whether or not we have a champion. And so I love like the framing of this whole conversation, like bringing a tool on board and like how to get a deal done within the company. Like we have to be the champions that we desire our sales team to have in their organizations. And Prakash, you mentioned like the three things here. I just want to add 2 points. The first one is if we don't really feel like this vendor or this solution is going to like change our life, not just our life, but the business life, it's going to change the way that we materially do business and help us be more effective and productive, then and we're not willing to like, put our foot in the, stick our foot out in the door, right? Like, then it's probably not a solution worth investing, right? Because as a champion, you are going to have to knock down doors. You are going to have to maybe upset and ruffle some feathers, right? And it has to be something, that's worth doing. The other thing I'd say is when we talk about a champion, we always have this notion of like them having the power and influence within the authority. And sometimes not all of us are in the position of having power and influence in all decisions or in certain decisions, right?
Yeah.
In that case, what our job is to do is actually to find somebody within the organization that can actually be our champion and the champion for the deal. And we can help them and build them up to be the appropriate champion for how we're going to bring the solution in. So maybe that's your boss, or maybe that is, a sales leader or somebody like that. Don't feel like, oh, you don't have enough influence, so you can't get it done. You can do the job of bringing in a strong champion also.
Absolutely. Like the top three, which is the power, influence, or access, even if I don't have it, probably it's a good idea to find somebody who has those things. And then you can still drive, you can help, they become the main champion for the project, but while you are enabling them to get the work done. Wonderful. Move to the next one. If you go one level deeper around, these are the traits that, okay, what a champion needs to have it. But when it comes to the actual executing the project, actually making sure that the vendor or the tool that you want to bring it, taking to the whole process, and every company has a different process. Here's the job of the champion, like really roles and responsibility wise. If you want to put some color around this, Laura, either the value add, stakeholder management, just running through the processes, anything around the role or the job of the champion.
Sure. So I think if I sum up the job of the champion, across all of these bullet points, the job of the champion is to sell internally, right? Is to be the internal salesperson of the vendor and of the solution. And if you think about that, like what do we do to enable our sales team to sell outside? Like we teach them all the product. We make sure that they know the competition. We use MedPick, right? These are all MedPick qualifiers here to understand whether the deal is being done. So we have to be like the internal salesperson. Are we as equipped as, as the vendor that's coming in to be able to, sell and position the tool? And a lot of it is like doing our own research to like, for example, knowing the competition, and it's like managing the deal. So whatever we're asking our salespeople to do to sell our solution into the market, that's what we have to do to bring our solution from our vendors into the organization as well.
Yeah. One of the things which I would say that, okay, in my own experience, and this is for the folks who have been probably, if this is the first time you are purchasing something within the company, the process, the knowledge about the process, the company buy a new tool is very important, because I have seen that, okay, sometimes when we are trying to sell and we think that, okay, we are talking to a champion, and at the end of the day, when it comes to the final time, they are not well aware about all the process. And then you may hit a roadblock in that case. So if you are the first time purchaser of a software in your company should definitely go and find out that, okay, what exactly the process, be it the security, legal, the vendor assessment, all sort of different things that your company has. Awareness of that and communicating that to the vendor is really, really important. Great. I'll talk about the tool. Anytime if you are planning to bring a tool, there has to be some benefit. There has to be some ROI. A lot of time we talk about just the efficiency gain and all, but in this economy where everything is being scrutinized much more than what it was 2 or 3 years back, I think understanding the benefit of the tool or the system that you are trying to bring is a lot more important. And Laura, I'll again pass it to you to say that, okay, how should a champion, what aspect of the ROI? I think the ROI is a very loaded word. Different company have a different perspective, or different executive have a different perspective. But what should a champion look at the benefit and the ROI in this economy if they are trying to bring a tool?
Yeah. So I think when we talk about ROI stands for return on an investment, right? And sometimes there's no return. Sometimes if we don't do it, then we're just like losing money. If we don't do anything, we're just losing money. So we don't have to think about it always as what is the return, but it can also be what is the cost? What is the cost of not doing this? And like Prakash said, you referenced that operational efficiency gains are hardest to justify. So for example, if we backed out into a model that says, well, we're going to save us 100 hours and that 100 hours is worth, like $4 million, right? Those things typically are hardest to justify because on a business sense, like kind of we pay for headcount. Okay. But I think what is a better strategy is to try to align your business, try to align the cost or the benefits on a commercial side to the business problems itself. So think about what this would mean as far as if you're freed up time for your RevOps team, what would it mean in terms of helping to accelerate the business, which is always, growth is always like one of the key drivers of any organization. So if we can say we're going to help accelerate growth because X, Y, and Z, then, that's always that's always a plus point. So I think it really is like positioning the benefits in terms of what the business really needs rather than what the function specifically needs. That's going to help you go further in terms of building your business case.
Yeah. The one thing we have seen is like in this economy, there is no department budget or so. There are, but there is always everything is going to the CFO, literally everything, be it a small ticket item or it's a big ticket item, probably everything is going to CFO. And their way of looking at the value prop is very different from if a sales leader is looking at. And exactly to your point, Laura, that everything has to be a bigger picture. There has to be a impact to the business versus, okay, I will save one headcount or the efficiency gain, or seller can do more deal and also because everybody said, oh, if that is the case, maybe work extra hour and then take care of that efficiency wise. But taking it to the CFO or the finance executive and showing them the benefit or the return or the opportunity cost. Like if you don't do it, what's the opportunity cost for this? What's the cost of not doing these changes is very important. And looking from a finance or the business perspective, I do think that, okay, that's become absolutely critical in this economy.
Yeah, Prakash, maybe I'll just give like a story here, a quick story on costs specifically. So, we always, I think we love to go best of breed. Like we love to go best of breed and like have the best tools for us, for our customers, for our sales team, basically, right? And more recently, I was involved in kind of consolidating several tools. And it wasn't necessarily that the consolidating vendor had subpar features. They were at least at 80% of what was already incumbent. But what I did here was like in consideration of the change management and implementation, don't forget to include those as costs when you do your cost benefit analysis, right? Because sometimes implementation and standing standing the team up, the efficiency loss that you're getting with the team, like learning on a new tool, etc. Those are all like, you know, real costs that can really impact efficiency. Right. So considering this, right, I also put together a business case of what it would look like when we consolidated the tools into one system and how much that would save us on a per user basis. And by showing that, just by showing the per user savings, like that was such an easy way for me to get to the CFO and say, hey, sign off on these things. Sign off on these things so that, you know, we can actually like move forward with it. The other trick that some of you, you know, may be exposed to is I actually asked the vendor for a buyout. So those are things that you can also put on the table, buyout with extended terms. Those are ways to get your costs down as well, and show a much nicer number to your CFO.
Yep. You mentioned about the change management. I do think that a lot of time as a champion or even as a vendor, a lot of time people try to hide those things because, okay, maybe if I talk about that, okay, this is gonna take this much time, I'll have to involve these many stakeholders, these many departments, this will trigger some approval, some process change and all. That is a real effort and real cost associated to that thing. And having those transparency, I do think that, okay, that's of course helps a lot in the bigger picture versus saying that, okay, no, this tool, it can be up and running in a week time and then you're not able to do it and it just have a very probably the bad impact or the not so good perception in the long term. Great. I'll move to the next slide because this is a topic where I think that, okay, we all are. I'd love to hear your perspective, Laura. But stakeholder management. If we talk about, if I go to the previous slide, the business impact. If your tool have or the project that you're trying to do is going to have a big impact to business, that means it is going to impact a lot of other departments. There are a lot of other stakeholders will be involved. How you manage that, how you get a buy-in from all of them, how do you show that, okay, the light or the vision that you have that actually is valid or it is going to help for each one of them, because everybody look from their own perspective rather than the bigger one. Making that a story, painting that picture is very, very important. So I'll pass it to you, Laura, that in this economy, the bigger the tool where you have to deal with the 3, 4, 5 different departments, 2 or 3 different executives, how should a champion try to build their case for these different stakeholders?
So I think it's really important to understand that, like, sometimes with the RevOps tools that you know we're looking for, sometimes they only affect the RevOps department, right? And in that case, we might be thinking, oh, well, it's just my team, and my team is a team of 4 or 5 or whatever it is. It's not 8.2 people. 8.2 is like the average number of stakeholders in an enterprise deal. However, if we can impact more people by creating new and different business cases and use cases for these other, you know, affecting these other peripheral, I guess, stakeholders, right? That will always help us. That will always help us with our case. So even if the tool is just a RevOps tool and it's only affecting the RevOps department, like, are we able to find other people, maybe it's the sales team, maybe it's the finance team, that's going to also benefit from this? You know, a quick example here, right? Commissions, right? Calculating commissions is like horrible. So we recently invested in a commissions tool that really was benefiting the RevOps team, but I also brought in the sales team and the finance team to help make the deal bigger so that it would have more, you know, political persuasion when going up into, you know, the budgeting and making that financial decision. So I think that's one, like, one point to note, like, if it's just yours, how can you bring other people in? And the second thing is if you already know it is going to touch multiple stakeholders, the key thing here is making sure that you've got a key use case and a key business driver for each of these, like, stakeholders that you can speak to from their point of view, right? And make sure too that whenever the vendor comes and the vendor is talking to the right person, that you are helping to steer that conversation in the right direction according to what that stakeholder specifically wants. So generally speaking, I'm not a big fan of let's bring everybody together and let's do, you know, a giant demo, because the demo might not be relevant to all of the folks on the call. I would be a fan more of having use case driven demos where I've got specific stakeholders on individual bits of the demo that's more relevant to them.
Great. I think you referred three very important point, Laura, just to summarize. So one is if you do not have if whatever the tool or solution you're trying to build, if does not impact a lot of department, the champion should still try to get more stakeholder so that they can represent in the project, because the more number of stakeholder you have in the project, I think it makes the story bigger to the CFO or the executive team that, okay, there are 5 other VPs or 5 other leaders that they are asking, or they want this project to be successful. If you already know that, okay, this is going to impact the multiple department or multiple stakeholder, have a very specific use case or the business value for each one of them, so that it should not be, as you said, like, okay, if it is a sales commission and that is only making life easy for the finance, you have to make sure that, okay, it is actually making life easy for the sales also, so that each department should have a critical use cases or the business value. And third one, which is, I think there is a slide or there is a point in the future slide, is about the running the demo or all this vendor assessment, bringing everyone, different stakeholder into one call, and then everybody is trying to talk about their feature or their business value. It just doesn't get, this is probably not the best use of time from both each of a stakeholder as well as the vendor side. Sometimes the vendor is probably not able to show their value if there are 5 different questions in the 5 different direction. So how to run the demo specifically for each stakeholder so that they can really see that, oh, this is how it is going to help. And they can really focus about from their angle, from their mindset, that, okay, how this product or this solution is going to help them. I think those, yeah.
Yeah, Prakash, I was just going to say that, like, sometimes like bringing in other people also helps build your credibility within the organization. And I know that vendors, like, they don't like to do it because they want to get the deal done. They want to get you to sign on the dotted line, keep it small, keep it within your budget, keep it within your team, right? But think about it. Like, if you did something like that, like, what would that look like to the rest of the organization? Would they feel like you were trying to involve them in making that decision? So you know, part of, I think, being a good champion too is building up that credibility because you're making everybody feel supported.
Wow, that's definitely a very important point. Yeah, as a champion, because if you're running again, going back to the previous slide that we said business impact, you're not talking about the one thing. It is something which is impacting the company. And if it is impacting the company or the business, there must be other people supporting that. And having a high credibility on that side is probably, it's just not the current project. It's going to help you on the future project or the future tool or solution that you want to bring in probably next quarter, next year, or 2 years down the line. Great. Let's I mentioned about this earlier about the process. Every company, even if you have bought I'm just picking it, a sales commission tool, a CPQ, an outreach, or whatever it is, even if you're trying to bring the same product in a new company that you are part of, I'm sure the process is different. Even if it is the same vendor, same problem, understanding the process, the decision criteria, who all are involved, and all the paperwork and all, I think is really, really, really important. Like, as a champion, I feel that, okay, if I have to bring something, I would be fully aware of each and every step, who has to do that, so that if somebody asks me, I should be able to talk about that at any time during the day. And having that familiarity, having that really, really aware of, I think is very, very helpful. But Nora, how do you see that? Okay, I said, like, you have joined Olo in last few months or so, probably doing something there, or even in the previous organization, the process, the awareness of the process for a champion, how critical is that?
Yeah, I mean, I think like understanding the process is actually is the thing that's going to like make or break your deal. Like, who is making the decisions? Like, is it made by the leader? Is it made by a committee? Right. And sometimes, yes, the bigger the deal, maybe the bigger the committee, but also I think it depends on the organization. Right. And so if you've never done a deal in an organization before, you might need to understand like who are all the people that need to say yes. So that's like the decision process, right? The decision criteria itself, as a champion, you should be able to define the decision criteria and kind of tell the stakeholders, here's the decision criteria that we're looking for, right? And that's going to depend on what we talked about earlier, which was the use cases. Like, have we defined those use cases? Then that becomes your decision criteria. So documenting it and putting it on paper is helpful in like how we're making a decision. And ideally, the way that you write your decision criteria is written in a way that only your choice vendor can fulfill them, right? Because that way you get the vendor of choice. The last thing too around paper process is, we always talk about the person signing on the dotted line, right? And a lot of times that may not actually be the budget owner. Sometimes it can be procurement, sometimes legal can be the one to sign on the dotted line, but also the approvals to get to signing on the dotted line can sometimes be undocumented, and it might not be as straightforward, right? So when I first joined Olo, I realized, there were like 3 different processes for approvals that I had to go through. One was in Coupa, one was in vendor, and there were like all of these things that I didn't even know about. But I'll actually tell you another story. When I was at a different organization and I was trying to get this larger deal done, it was like, I think over a 3-year term, the total contract value was in the millions of dollars. And I had done a deal like this before. I'd done several deals, but not like as big as this one. So this was the largest vendor that I was bringing in or renewing, I think. And on the last day of the quarter, this was totally like my bad, my fault. Last day of the quarter, when we were trying to bring in business, I was trying to get this deal signed as well. And I had to go to 4 C-level executives and sit outside their door and verbally ask for their approval. And I would say that, one, it was a huge miss on my part to like not know what that process was, because these 4 C-level folks could have not been in the office, right? And 2, it's also like a sign that like you have to be available to kind of do what needs to be done to get the deal done. Like that's what I had to do. I had to just sit and wait. Like, were they free, right? And the CFO is like looking over deals. The CRO was also like in the middle of the end of the quarter, and I just had to wait to wait for my turn. So sometimes if you don't know that up front, then you'll be in trouble at the end. So I think uncovering as much as you can up front is the goal here.
Great. You mentioned about the decision criteria, and I want to just dig deeper a little bit more, Laura. You said like how it's the champion responsibility to put the decision criteria. And of course, if you have your favorite vendor, then you want to put it something that, okay, that suits more for them. Would you say that, okay, a lot of time I've seen that companies come up with the decision criteria much early in the process when they probably, as a champion, I have not even spoken to a few vendors or any vendor. Maybe I have someone in mind and all, but I have not put it. Do you say that, okay, because like the RFI or the other processes that, okay, the industry has, as a champion, when should I start talking to my choice of vendor or my the one which I want to bring in, and then start putting the decision criteria? Like if it is happening much early in that, then probably I did not have a vendor of choice. So I did not know like how they operate. Like how exactly the change management of the decision criteria or the life cycle of the decision criteria when the project is initiated versus when you get a vendor of choice from your side. If you can talk through a little bit, that would be helpful.
I think both are good, right, Prakash? But if you think about it, 60% of customers actually, by the time they talk to the vendor, have already made up their mind on their buying criteria. So I think it depends on how much evaluation you want to do. And in these like times when we're doing hard and fast, and like a lot of information is out there, we have a lot of reviews. We tend to lean, I think, into we tend to already lean into like one or two vendors. We know it, like these are the top ones because I heard about this one, X, Y, and Z. And really it's an evaluation between the two vendors, not so much like we do an RFI or an RFP out to the customers. Those are very extensive. And to be honest, I've never actually done an RFP out to a vendor because I always had a clear idea of like, okay, here are the tools that I want to choose. And there potentially could be one or two vendors to solve it for us, and then evaluating those vendors according to the decision criteria. I would also say that with the decision criteria, it starts out being generic and then it becomes very specific, right? I mean, just think about it. Like when you go to buy a car, you're like, yeah, this is how much money I roughly have, and I want to buy this kind of car. And then all of a sudden, when you test drive a car, you like become like, oh my gosh, seat warmers are really, really important. But you weren't thinking about that before. So sometimes the more that you learn about the vendor, the more you can determine whether or not a specification or feature becomes part of your decision criteria and becomes part of like what you want and what you need versus like just a nice to have.
Let's go to the next one. To your competition. We have been chatting about the vendor of choice and all. That means there are more than one vendor involved. And the competition could be both like, okay, what if there is another vendor and that you have a favorite and you want to see the competition? You also have the competition of what if we don't do any changes? Like you spoke about, Laura, that, okay, the cost of not doing it. Or if you're trying to bringing a tool, there could be a competition of build versus buy. So there are few different flavor of competition that, okay, that comes into any buying process. And as a champion, awareness of your competition and having a pros and cons or how exactly your tool is better than all of those different aspects is really, really important. But I'll pass it to you, Laura, and then we'd love to hear what are the things would you say as a competition and me or you or anyone as a champion of that? What are different aspects, like how much awareness you need to have from your vendor of choice versus the other competition also, so that you can take a better judgment and you have all the right answer when somebody brings in a competition in any conversation, which happens mainly internally within many stakeholders who are involved in the project.
I think we usually see two kinds of competition internally. The first competition is the do nothing competition. And think about it, like whenever you bring a new tool into the system, someone has to do work, and it's a lot of work to implement. It's a lot of work to implement the any kind of system, even though vendors always say it's super easy, it just plugs in. It never does. It never does do that, right? So someone always has to do work, and it could be that they don't want to do additional work, or it could just be like there's no funding for it, right? In which case, it is really important to make sure that you've got the right business case to bolster your decision and saying like, look, if we don't do this, these are the things that we're losing out on. So I think that the do nothing option is actually harder to overcome than like actual competition, because it's about changing people's mindsets and having the right level of stakeholder influence. And that's why, having more stakeholders is sometimes better because it can help you actually direct that decision, right? The other kind of competition is like a competition where you've got another champion within the organization that is the champion of the competitor of the solution that you want to bring in, right? In which case, I think in those situations, yes, you do still have to you still have to have a business case. But I think what's more important is understanding the three levels of differentiation, three levels of competition, basically: holistic, unique, and comparative, right? Most of the time with comparative differentiators, a lot of systems and solutions these days, like they're very comparative. Like one person, has it in blue and then someone has it in red, but they kind of still do the same thing, right? So just understanding what those differences are is really important, but that's like just surface level. The next two things are holistic and unique differentiators. These are things, holistic differentiators are things that are more qualitative to the vendor itself. So for example, they're more agile, right? Or their background, is in software, something like that. And unique differentiators are things that only that vendor does, that no other vendor does. So I would say being able to position those holistic and unique differentiators and competition against the competition is more important. For example, for me, when I think about a solution, one of the holistic differentiators that I look at is whether or not my vendor is going to be able to be agile enough as a disruptor to be able to partner with us and help us keep up to the things that we need to do, right? And we're not like Olo right now isn't like a company that's totally built out. We've got all of these like structure frameworks. We're not like that. Like we have a lot of change and we have a lot of customization. We need a lot of flexibility. So what I like to see from my vendors is like, oh, are they going to be able to like be a good partner, right? And if and if the other competition that maybe has better comparative features, right, but is slow moving, and we're really going to have to like fit our solution into what they have into their box, that's not that wouldn't work for me. And being able to defend that and help your team understand what those are. And it could be different for your organization. For your organization, you might have a different have different perspective on what's really important, but really understanding that so that you can defend against those things.
Yeah. I think the 3 level of competition or the differentiator is really important, because as you said, like if you're picking a sales commission tool, probably there are 5 tools in the market. They all are doing the very similar thing. Maybe they're like plus minus 2 or 3 here and there, but they all are doing the same thing. But there are other aspects which are outside the product feature or the product capability and all, which is more about that, okay, how you see the partnership, how do you see. I was talking to one of the founder, and they said like, oh, we bought the product because we thought like we felt they are more culturally fit to our organization. Now you're talking about the cultural fit with a vendor also who are not part of your organization. So there are a lot of different aspects other than just the product feature and the product capability, which are important to bring in when you understand about the competition. And you mentioned about the not doing any change. I do think that, okay, that's a big one. It could be you already have a solution and you want to move to something. So that's me, no, let's stay with the existing one. Or you do not have a solution. I'm able to run my sales commission on an Excel sheet. Okay, why do I have to automate? Why do I have to have, like, there is a cost factor, there is a change management and all of those. And this is where the change management becomes very important, and having more transparency and having a plan that, okay, how exactly the Excel, which gives you all the different flexibility that you're looking for, versus a tool which will have a guardrails, which will have some control and all that, okay, you are only allowed to do these things once it is in place. How to justify that, how to make sure that, okay, people are comfortable with that. That's definitely a very important factor.
Mm.
Great. I don't know if there are any questions, but just to everyone, if there are any question or any comment, whatever we are talking, because I'm sure that, okay, a lot of you have been part on a role of a champion, or somebody who is either selling it, or you have interacted with a champion. If you want to put a comment around any of these topics, please use the Q&A or the chat section and put your comment. Would love to bring that also in the conversation.
I'm wondering if we give some specific examples of a good argument versus a bad argument. And I know there are so many steps involved in the process, but for example, I love that you pointed out it's really hard to compare time savings to other gains. Perhaps we pretend we're buying a solution and come up with a good way to pitch it and a bad way to pitch it.
Yeah, Camilla, I think that's really helpful. So I'd say like a bad way to pitch it would be like, it's going to help me save time so that I can go home earlier. That's more of a bad way. But a good way would be like, hey, by getting this tool, we're going to be able to address this other one specific initiative that we haven't been able to allocate resources towards. And then you talk about all the benefits of that, specific initiative, right? So addressing the business challenge, like the business challenge is usually not, we want, we want to do less manual workload, but the business challenge can be, hey, we're not able to look at these strategic initiatives or strategic things because we don't have the resources to do it.
And I like so much what you're doing there because you're aligning with one of the company's core objectives because you're choosing a core initiative. And if you can do that, like you said, unfortunately, I think a lot of people, if in revenue operations, a lot of times we pitch something as we can save X number of hours. That's pretty meaningless because I don't think our bosses understand what we could do instead with those hours and what we would gain with those hours. So tying to a core initiative, that is so fantastic.
Thank you. What else would be helpful?
Let's see. We have a question. Could you also comment on champion and vendor collaboration in the decision process with a few examples?
Yes, what a great question.
Yeah, it's right on the next slide. So Laura, I'll leave it to you, or start with you for answer, and then I'll put my thought.
Yeah, thank you. So I think a good champion will help the vendor, will help direct the vendor's talk track and like set a lot of like, for example, the agendas and the use cases, right? So before it's almost like you are prepping the vendor to show up in the meeting and here are the things that you're talking about. And here are the things that you know your vendor is going to talk about because you've already had that internal conversation with your individual stakeholders and say, hey, what do you want to see? Right. And you're saying, you're basically like saying, these are the things my customer wants to see. Vendor, please show us these things. This is gonna be the agenda. And one of the things that I like to do is when I come into a meeting with my stakeholders and my vendor together, first of all, like I usually do the meeting calendaring because then it's like it's my meeting and these stakeholders are showing up to my meeting versus it's the vendor's meeting that they're being invited to. And by doing that, you're really saying, hey, we talked about something, we agreed on something. So please come to this meeting where you said that you were going to, discuss something with me. And by the way, the vendor is here as well because they're going to add color, right? So kind of opening up the meeting, we agreed to do this. This is the problem. And I'm introducing my vendor to give us more detail about, how they're going to solve the issue, right? And whether, it's the one vendor of choice or the two vendors, whatever it is. But by setting up that meeting, you are really owning that process and taking responsibility for here's what the outcome should be. The second thing that I'll just go back to is really on educating the vendor. Like whatever your vendor is showing, it should never be the first time that you're seeing it, right? So a lot of times I'm working together with the vendor to put together the decks. What does the deck look like? Show me the demo and, walk through the demo and I'll say, I think that one piece of demo is not going to be really relevant, but can you show, something else, right? So it's almost like you do have to invest the time into doing dry runs and into collaborating effectively with your vendor. And you shouldn't feel like you have to hold back information for whatever reason. Like if you have a good vendor and a good partnership, then that's the way that it should work. You shouldn't feel like, oh, I have to hold back this information because otherwise they're going to charge me really high price or whatever. At the end of the day, your budget is your budget. That's what it is. Your vendor will most likely try to meet your budget rather than saying like, oh, this is the high price, you have to increase your budget. Nobody thinks that way.
And I think like they understand even better than we do that customer evidence is the best evidence. So I love asking them for any kind of ROI calculations they can give us based on product usage, any way we can form an argument to finance. I think that's fantastic.
I'll add one more point around this topic is in the previous slide, when we spoke about knowing the competition, your vendor should know also about that, okay, what they are competing with. May not be specifically a vendor, another vendor, but if it is, there are something which are holistic or unique thing, they need to be aware of so that as a vendor, they should know about their product, their tool, how they bring the value, and probably they can help you to answer that, okay, how to respond to for a certain competition that you have in the project. So making your vendor aware of the competition is probably a really important factor so that they can equip or they can give you all the material, talking material that you can present internally to the different stakeholder against the different competition that are involved. Great. Hope that was helpful, Supreet. But yeah, if you have any comment on that, please feel free to use the chat or the Q&A. I think we have last slide this, but happy to chat about other question or other any comment, and or if anybody has any question for Laura, happy to bring that too. But the last, after all of these roles and responsibility, stakeholder management, competition, the process, all of these, the end goal is the project should be done and really seeing the project through the finish line. The different things involved in that, because all of these are like the pre things, which is like helping you to do bring the tool, but making sure that, okay, it is crossing the finish line. And that's very important. And Laura, I'd love to hear from you that once everything is done, once let's say the stakeholder management, the budget and all of those are there, what are it still? I don't think that the champion job is done as soon as the executive gives thumbs up, okay, let's go and buy it. It's like really taking it through the finish line. What are the things that, okay, the champion should not forget about unless the work is done, unless the thing is done? Till the signature, even after the signature, the go live, all of the other things that is involved.
I think if we think about it this way, like think of all the things that you've done to get this deal done so far, right? You've like ruffled a few feathers, really, pushed very hard, knocked on lots of doors. And so it's in your best interest to make sure that the system is actually working as expected and you're offering the results, right? You're getting to those positive business outcomes that you said that's the solution was going to do. And I think that the first step to doing that is making sure that it gets implemented and the time to value like is as short as possible. So I always recommend like understanding what that looks like and having all of your resources lined up so that the day that the signature is done, you're off. You're like your next day kickoff call, right? And what's the time to implement and how do we get there? And then the other thing too is like really holding your vendor accountable. And I always say, hey, the deal's not done yet. Like the hard part hasn't started yet. That was the easy part. Getting the signature was the easy part. The hard part now is showing that the tool actually works. So understanding what those like adoption metrics are. How do we measure like the leading indicators of success? And then what are the lagging indicators? And are we tracking to that? Are going to be really important because that also actually lends to your own credibility as a champion, right? To getting the next deal done. You need to show that your project was successful before you can move on, before you can buy another tool.
Yep, that's important because all the value add or the business case or the value proposition that as a champion is showed it to all the stakeholder, the only way they're going to see is once after the signature is done and the project is being implemented, and having the other stakeholder or all those parties involved and keeping them updated even after the signature during the implementation. I think it is the champion role. You may have someone else in your team helping you, but you should still be the face for the stakeholder or executive, going back to the success criteria and all those other things, like what are the different measure we have on the ROI, cost of not doing, or whatever the business value we spoke about, or the business impact that you shown them during the sales cycle. You have to have a way to go back and represent that, okay, how exactly the tool or the solution is helping to meet those. I think those are important. And it's a champion role. Also, like you may have someone else in the team, but as a champion, you should still be very, very involved. You should have a very much interest to taking it back to the stakeholder and executives.
So your point to proving the value, I would really like if people walk away with one thing, they should be doing this with all of their projects, right? So figuring out a bench line, figuring out how you're going to be impacting the business, and don't be afraid to tie it to revenue when it's relevant. I know a lot of people are hesitant to do that because a lot of things can impact revenue, but if you know what's changing and you're making the only significant change, that's a correlation that you just can't afford to ignore, and it looks fantastic on your resume.
Totally.
Certainly. I know we are at time. I know, Kamala, if you have any question or you want to open to the floor, and then we see if there are, yeah. Want to give some time for the audience to ask any questions or any comment.
Yep, and we always do a survey at the end. So if there's advice, any kind of feedback, that would be really great too. We'll give it another minute to have folks ask questions, but maybe in the meantime, Laura, I would really love to hear from you how exactly you measure impact in some scenarios, maybe just a couple quick examples.
Yeah, what a great question. So in one scenario I had, I brought on brought in an account planning software to help us do our account plans. And account planning was a big initiative because, you know, we're missing a lot of the strategic information. And so I measured it by percent of account plan completion and number of account plans that we had. So we went from like 500 to 700 in like, you know, 1 quarter. And it may not have all been due to the software, but that was, again, going back to your point, tying back to initiative. And one of the challenges that I give to my team is what is going to be the adoption metric for every single system that we bring on board. It's always going to be different. I mean, at first glance, you know, it's like, okay, how many times did they log in, and you know, how many like profiles did they save or whatever, right? But those are like I call them like somewhat vanity metrics. Like if there is a way to tie these all back to all the tools that they use and their eventual productivity, that is actually something that is an excellent exercise if you can get to that point. And I've been able to do it at some companies that I've been able that I've been at before.
And efficiency gains for RevOps specifically, that's not usually an effective argument, but if you can find efficiency gains for sales, so if you go through their processes, I've even timed people doing certain activities and said, here's how many hours per month each sales rep can spend selling instead of doing this administrative task.
Mm-hmm.
That will make an impact. I know it's unfortunate that they don't really glom on to our impact as much as anybody else. Okay, so we have a question. Any tools you use to manage and track the tool tech stack automations in a central way with security and governance? That's a lot in one centralized location. Vanta does a fairly good job of that, and there's some other third-party software, but do you guys know of things outside of spreadsheets that are used for that sort of thing?
And not for security and governance, but I do know that Productive has a really good tool that like helps you track user adoption and help you manage your renewals, which is really important for me. On the IT and security side, like I have the IT team do that on the governance side, so I have them manage that that side of it.
Yeah, there are tools in the market specifically in that domain. Laura mentioned about Productive. There are other also where exactly solving this, that you can have all your contracts, you can see that, okay, when the renewals are coming, what are the different terms and all, and then what are the security question and all of those things. So that if you have to go and remember that, okay, I have to ask another SOC 2 because their SOC 2 certification has expired, the tool will prompt you rather than you running on an Excel sheet and running a monthly or quarterly review across all the vendors that you have. So yeah.
Wonderful. Well, I want to thank you both for being here and sharing your knowledge. Thank you for everybody in the audience. We do record these sessions, so and we do promote them, so keep an eye out for that. And have a wonderful rest of your day, evening, whatever time zone you're in.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, everyone. And thanks, Laura. Thanks for joining us, but thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.